You're very welcome to episode 35 of the Scaling Your Business podcast. For this episode, I've got Dan Gable joining me. Dan is the founder of Sprat and Shoutout. Dan, you're very welcome to the show.
Hey, great to see you, Ryan. Nice to be here.
Delighted to have you on the show. As usual with guests, I like to go back to the very first chapter. Through some research, I found out that you went to high school in Chelmsford, just outside of London. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. Did you grow up there?
Chelmsford, yeah, absolutely.
Chelmsford.
Yeah, grew up there.
Any favorite memories, standout memories from your childhood growing up there?
Yeah, oh God, favorite memories. I don't know. To be honest, I couldn't wait to get out. I couldn't wait to get out of Chelmsford. You know, I kind of wanted to, I sort of knew I wanted to get involved in video at a pretty early age. So my biggest memory of school actually was for years I was waiting to be of a certain age to be able to use all the CCTV kit they had there. So literally, it was like 4 years seeing this thing. And then right before, when it came to my year, when I got up to the year where I could finally get involved in cameras and stuff, someone stole all the kit. So it was pretty depressing, really. That's one of my lasting memories of school life, actually, that disappointment.
What was it that wanted you to get involved in video so early? Because I'm assuming you went to secondary school there, which is in your teens. So that's an early age to know that you wanted to get involved in video.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know. I think my dad worked in TV, and so I used to go up to LWT studios, when I was young, when I was 10 years old, and walk around the studios and stuff. So I knew that's what I wanted to do. And it was so different then. It's really bizarre thinking about how different things were to now. Because then it was you couldn't just get cameras. I had a little kind of 8mm film camera when I was young, but video it wasn't even really around as a consumer product when I was young. So it was quite a big deal to even see a camera. And then when I finally got into it and working in TV, I'd say I'm an editor or I'm sound mixing or whatever. No one really understood what you ever did, or no one understood what I did. But now everyone makes content, so it's amazing kind of seeing that change.
You referenced the old days, the camera. My father has a huge passion for photography since he was a teenager. He's 55 years old. And one of the recent purchases was a Leica camera, but with no digital screen on the back. So you can take a photograph, but can't see the outcome for days, which confuses the hell out of me. But he says it brings him back to his childhood of taking photographs and not knowing the outcome.
Yeah, it's amazing. I think I'm really lucky actually to have. And I was speaking to a designer actually last week, kind of similar age to me, similar background, and I think it's an amazing time to have been in the industry. We're seeing this huge transformation with technology. So, like you say, we didn't have undo buttons when I used to edit radio shows day in, day out, and it was razor blades, cutting bits of tape together, putting it round your neck if it was an interview, having to remember which bit was what, which kind of by the length of it, which bit it was. There was no kind of, it was such a manual process, but it really taught you about timing, and everything took so long, and it was such a pain that you had to kind of get really good at it. And now it's almost too easy actually now with computers. It's funny.
Yeah, you sound like you've got a real passion for the industry. Who do you think had the biggest impact on you in your early days?
Oh, fair. So yeah, interesting. I guess in the early days, really early days, it was a guy called Jacques Tati. A French filmmaker, and I remember when I was really young, I was probably 10 or 11 watching Jacques Tati films, and it really made me understand kind of the construction of these things. I was quite lucky early on to sort of, because I was around it so much, but he made me really understand audio, the importance of sound, the importance of how things can be happening off screen to add, he was the first person where I really understood you didn't necessarily have to see the thing for it to have an impact on you. He was incredible with sound, stuff happening off screen that kind of added to the story or added to the impact of things. and it really, I was super young, but that was a huge impact. And then I guess the other massive impact was it's a cliche, but Steven Spielberg actually, but not even Jaws, but there was a film called Duel, which I think was his first film, and I remember watching it when I was young and thinking it was the most amazing film I'd ever seen. It's still to this day a brilliant film, and in a way, Jaws is like Jewel, in the sea. Actually, it was just about this kind of. I can't even remember how to describe it, but it was basically two kind of trucks almost with the story. There was it's one truck and a car, so it was basically this truck driver kind of harassing this car driver, but it was almost as much about the truck and the car as it was about the people. It was just an incredible film, so that had a huge impact on me as well. I didn't realize at the time he would be such a huge director.
Yeah. What did you say it was called? Jewel,
yeah, definitely watch it. Steven Spielberg. I think it's his first film.
Okay, well, I definitely got to watch it. Before we jump into business, with all my guests, I do a bit of research. I noticed that you were nominated for a BAFTA in 2002. You've been to places like Jordan. You've worked on TV programs such as the Brit Awards, Big Brother, Top Gear. What's one thing you're into or curious about that not a lot of people know?
Oh, one thing. I did a bit of stand-up comedy when I was young, and I love anything. Like, I love comedy, and I love writing stand-up comedy. I didn't necessarily love performing it, but I really like writing it. I love the kind of exactitude of writing jokes, and I got a real kick out of that. And it's taught me so much about writing, actually.
Have you got a favorite comedian?
Yeah, do you know what? It keeps changing. It was Bill Hicks for a long time, and then I was on TikTok. Kind of embarrassingly, I'm probably too old to be on TikTok, but I saw some old Billy Connolly stuff, and it just reminded me how great a comedian he was and is. So yeah, I guess those two. Yeah, I mean, there's so many. Like Ricky Gervais, I think is amazing. There's so many great comedians.
Yeah, there's an endless amount of comedians if you ever want to laugh. Favorite aspect of being an entrepreneur? Have you got one?
Yeah, I guess control. Ultimately, I think I'm not good in employment. I've never kind of made it work that well for me. I sort of don't know the constraints of it. I'm not very good with company politics. I think entrepreneurialism is really about being in control of your destiny and being able to kind of serve people to the best of your ability without really anyone else getting in the way necessarily. It's kind of crazy as that sounds. You're creating a system rather than being part of the system.
No, I'm 100% with you on that. Look, you're big on video content. For those who haven't potentially created or posted a video on, let's say LinkedIn is the B2B platform, have you any tips on where they can look for ideas and inspiration? I'm hinting at one of your recent LinkedIn videos that you put up.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not getting the hint, but I think the inspiration video is really what's in you. I think there's so much content now, and I say this a lot, that we're in the age of authenticity, that really, nowadays it's about being your true self, being authentic, not necessarily selling so much as telling stories. So I think it's really finding what interests you and putting it out there. It's the same rules as any kind of artistry, like songwriting, filmmaking. Everything works if it's a true reflection of yourself, and if you just try and do what other people are doing, I don't think it works very well. So it's just about be yourself. It's so easy to put content out now. It's incredibly easy. Yeah. So everyone should be doing it for sure.
Well, irrespective of taking a hint or not, you answered the same way you answered your previous video, which shows that your answer is genuine. So nice one. My dad wrote a book on storytelling, and one formula that I've followed in terms of storytelling, probably because of him, is the Pixar strategy. I don't know if it is the Pixar strategy. That's what I call it, where it's 5 steps to a story. In the beginning, something happened because of that, and as a result. How do you tackle new projects? Because you're involved in a lot of videos, whether it's commercial, music, TV work, corporate work. Is there a strategy like the one I've just mentioned, the Pixar strategy, that you'll use as a core foundation for your videos?
Yeah, it's a really good question. Do I have a go-to storytelling strategy? I'm not sure that I do. I mean, there's great, there's a great book. I think the 7 basic plots that kind of said that every film or every story, there's only 7 stories, which I absolutely agree with. So I tend to sometimes, I don't, normally afterwards, I try and fit it into one of these kind of 7 stories, if you like. But I think I just go, it's a really good question. I think I just kind
of... Is there like a storyboard that you do before you tackle anything?
I kind of create it in my head, really. Like, a storyboard comes later, and the storyboard is normally a way of kind of visualizing it for you, and then, then for clients to understand. The storyboard is actually, I don't use that as a storytelling tool. I use it as just a tool to make sure I've got the right shots on the shoot. So it's it's almost like a to-do list. So I created the stories because I find it quite constricting, kind of writing out a storyboard. But yeah, I guess I just try and find the truth. Like if it's a music video, I just try and find just an angle, a story, and if it's a corporate video, it's the same. It's just something that kind of, I use, I know it sounds, I guess I'm waffling a bit because I'm not quite sure about the process, but it's a bit like, writing a joke. It's a very similar process. You come up with a premise, then you construct it to be quite elegant in its writing. It's the same with video. It's really, what you find with video, and it's sort of obvious, but it's kind of true as well, is that some things that look really great on paper don't look so great on video, because video is a whole different way of communicating it.
Yeah.
And so it's really, it's a very visual medium, and there's also stuff that doesn't need to be written on the page to make a video work. So it's almost like some of the best video ideas actually, don't look great on paper, but they work really well on video. So to answer your question, trying to answer it to the best of my ability, is to think about it visually
Okay.
and in sound, rather than think about it necessarily in words. So almost, almost close your eyes and then imagining how it's going to look and sound. And that's the process.
Where do you pull inspiration from? So when you're like thinking of any TV work or music videos or more videos where you have more creative freedom and you're not restricted, is there places that you go to pull inspiration from?
I think it's memory. I think, I'm kind of lucky enough, certainly in my, when I worked in TV, I probably spent more time in watching content than I did kind of watching real life. So I've got huge kind of reference library of films and TV, going back for years. I might not necessarily remember the actors or the names, but I remember kind of specific things about them. There's something also about kind of, when you're editing or working in sound that I did, you almost have a photographic memory of content when you go back to it. So I think I call upon things from the past, other stuff, and it could be like picking from different things. It could from films, from TV, from theatre, even from books. So yeah, it's a really tricky one. I think it occurs as a kind of whole
life in general.
Yeah, it's a kind of 360 sort of process, if that makes sense.
When it comes to the process itself, for me, when I start any new project, if I'm asked what's my favorite part of the process, it could be the reaction of others, seeing the video when it's fully complete. It could be the process itself, the beginning, the storyboarding. For me, it would certainly be overcoming or doing something that I hadn't done before, a shot that I hadn't got. Is there a moment for you in the overall process that you favor the most?
Yeah, another good question. I think the writing side, that the moment in the writing where you've kind of nailed it, you think, wow, this is it, this is going to work. Like it almost, it all just kind of clicks together, and you've almost kind of made it already at that point where you can kind of really feel how it's going to work. So that's definitely one. And then on a shoot itself, when you kind of when you get a kind of magic moment that can sometimes change the whole thing that you're doing, but there's there's these kind of magic moments in shoots, whether it's in dialogue, whether it's in just kind of something happens to create a bit of magic. I mean, I'm a big believer, and it's quite a complicated way to answer, but I was watching this documentary last night actually, and it was about chaos theory, and it was basically about how very, very simple things, if fed back to themselves, can create things that are really complicated. So it talked about fractals, and it talked about the kind of building blocks of us are very simple, but it gets very complicated very quickly. And there's something, I remember when I was quite young, I got inspired by Jerry Anderson in terms of audio, who made a lot of good audio effects by just feeding audio back through something. And it never kind of quite sounded the same. You had to capture it, and it would never sound the same again. It's a very long-winded way of saying that I believe that you should always allow space for kind of luck or the universe or whatever. Nothing should be so locked in place that things can't, conspire to make it better. So I kind of allow that in everything I do. And I think it's a really important thing to kind of get yourself out of the way sometimes, rather than, have something so well constructed that there's no room for any kind of fortuitous things happening.
A lot of the work that when we're talking about filming, TV work, music videos, corporate work, all that is your business Sprat, but you've got another one called Shoutout.
Yeah.
Great idea. What made you create Shoutout?
Yeah, great question. I think with Shoutout, it was really, I'd spent such a big part of my life kind of, struggling with technology. I saw the change from tape to computers, and it was just like a big part of my life was really around technology. And I just thought that technology kind of gets in the way of storytelling as much as it enables storytelling. And really what Shoutout was about was being able to facilitate anyone making videos that didn't know how to edit or didn't know how that process worked. So it's basically a way of automating video production, and it turns the post-production process completely on its head. So that was the idea, really, was to make it, because everyone wants authentic content now. They don't necessarily want it heavily edited. It's a way, Shoutout's a way of branding up content and making it available to everyone. That was the real mission behind it.
Shoutout cards is my favorite part of Shoutout, and my girlfriend came to me maybe two weeks ago and said she wanted some help because there was she's a teacher. There's a teacher in her school that had a kid, and she was trying to get everyone to shoot a video to say, congratulations, and then put it all together. And now I wish she came to me last night when I discovered Shoutout cards, because being able to combine all these videos in one area where someone sent the link, it's brilliant. The Shoutout card. So kudos to you for thinking of that, because I can see that it just solves so many things, from family wanting to shoot a video for wishing someone else a happy birthday to corporate videos as well. It's brilliant.
Brilliant. Yeah. Do you know what? Shoutout cards, we don't market it hardly at all. We should give it more love, actually, because it is brilliant. And it's, we've all created Shoutout cards for each other, and some of them are really moving. When you've got a kind of bunch of people, just so Shoutout cards, just for the benefit of the audience, is a way that you subscribe. You can send out a link to multiple people to record a message, and it compiles it up into a kind of montage message. It's a great way to get a montage message from friends and family, and it's really, really moving, actually. Sometimes these how powerful these messages can be, and they're just all shot on phones. It's amazing.
You've got a lot going on, and you've achieved a lot, from TV programs to the second business, Shoutout. What continues to drive you?
Yeah, good question. I think it's really ultimately it's sort of being of service, making a difference. It just sounds such a cliche, but I just think I think we're all kind of duty bound just to kind of move the conversation forward somehow. I was really lucky that where as a co-founder of a company that scaled hugely, doing things like Big Brother, and we were one of the first companies to really get involved with editing on computers. People were laughing at it, saying like it's never going to happen, but of course it did happen, and that's how all shows are made now, and all content's made electronically. So I think it's just about kind of doing stuff. Maybe I'm lucky or unlucky in terms of, like, I don't really like shopping. I don't really like, I love watching TV, but I kind of much prefer to be making stuff than kind of consuming stuff in a way, if that makes sense. I much prefer to just be creating and getting stuff out there. That's what drives me. The cliche is, if you find something you love, you never work a day. And I've always managed to monetize the things I love doing. I'm really lucky in that respect, so yeah, it's great.
I'd love to be on fly on the wall watching you watch TV. That sounds strange, but let me explain why. I've got a cousin in America. I go to America 4 or 5 times a year. He is the managing director of a large hotel. Anytime I go out for beers or eating with him, he can never sit still. He's watching the waiters, how they serve, how they put down knives and forks and everything. And it's because he works in hospitality. I imagine they're somewhat similar, although you can't see the insides of your brain when you're watching TV compared to the average person watching TV. Am I right? Am I wrong?
It's really interesting on that, because I was like, it like a long while ago, it kind of ruined the whole experience for me, because I could not, I couldn't watch TV without criticizing it, without, I was basically watching it like a professional, and it ruined it. But interestingly enough, that doesn't happen to me at all now, and I think for me it's quite interesting. Why is I figured out basically that when you watch something, you've got to decide who you're being when you watch it. And this is a big thing for like corporate video. So I can give you an example around corporate video. So say I make a corporate video and the client, and I play it to the client. When the client watches it, they're watching it through the eyes of like, I'm going to criticize it. I've got to figure out what's wrong with it, for example. And so they never really watch it like an audience would. And it kind of taints the experience for them, because that's what they're meant to be doing. But sometimes some great content gets destroyed through people's inability to kind of compartmentalize how they're going to consume something, if you like. So it kind of took me a little while, but I absolutely watch TV like an audience. I don't, I don't have to. I could switch immediately, but why would I? And then I could kind of criticize every part of it. But no, I absolutely watch film and TV like an audience. Occasionally, if there's a glaring kind of mistake, I might comment on it. But yeah, I think it's really important for everyone to be responsible to how they watch stuff, because you can ruin it. You can ruin films forever if you watch it like a filmmaker.
The penny dropped for me when you gave the example of the corporate video of them looking at it from a different angle. Does that come through the way you've positioned yourself there to watch TV normally? Does that come through years of practice, or is there a switch that someone can switch on and off?
It's actually years of, for me, it was practice. And there's this kind of weird thing. If you're editing something that when you're playing it to someone else, you as an editor see it through their eyes. Or as a director, by virtue of the fact that they're there watching it, you kind of see it a different way to how you've seen it. It's that thing about gathering distance. And I had to really, really practice, because I knew, I pretty well got that in order to be better at what I did, I'm going to have to kind of be able to switch my point of view, to a client's point of view, to the audience point of view, or whoever's point of view it is, to be able to watch what I'm making with these different eyes, if you like. So it took me a while to get it. And it's a great trick for anyone to do, and it's almost a necessity, and it's easier said than done. But the way I did it initially was just change where I was sitting. I had different points that, if I was going to be like, look at it from a client's point of view, I'd stand up, or if I was going to look at it from the client point of view, I might stand up in a different position. So it's really great just to get that different perspective. So I use physical geography to do it, and then I got better at it. But it's so important, because as filmmakers, you've got to be able to see everyone's, you've got to be able to switch. It's so important.
Well, 3 final questions. Do you have anyone you look to for advice, or do you listen to podcasts or read any books?
I read tons of books, tons of kind of self-help, personal development books. I've been a kind of junkie for those kind of books from really early on. I think I qualified as a hypnotherapist, a counsellor, NLP Master Practitioner. I kind of I love again, actually, just going back to what we were talking about again, just trying to figure out ways to be able to kind of understand people, understand how people think. So I'm absolutely addicted to those kind of books. Podcasts, I like them, and I'm just fascinated by, like everyone, by how people think and do stuff. The best advice I've ever been given, it was a guy, he sadly died, but a guy that was really inspirational to me, a guy called Felix Dennis, who was like famous for being very wealthy. He founded Maxim magazine. He was just an amazing guy, and he said, like, he wrote a book called How to Get Rich, and he said where people go wrong is they listen to people that haven't actually done the thing, because there's so many people out there that will tell you how to do something when they haven't actually done it themselves. And so I don't think he ever wanted to write a book. I don't know, but he was someone you listen to, because he did get incredibly rich. So the best bit of advice he gave me was, always listen to people that have done the thing, rather than people that kind of train you to do the thing, but haven't necessarily done it. So I think that's really key.
Yeah, there's an app that I came across last night. I've not used it yet. It's called Blinkist. It's an app that basically condenses books into 15, 20-minute audio.
It
takes the core elements of it. So I'm looking forward to trialing it later on. 2 final questions.
Yeah.
I want you to imagine it's the end of the decade, so it's 2030, and you're looking back on the last 9-10 years. What would you like to be looking back on?
Oh, what do you mean? What, in terms of what I've done, in terms of the world, or what?
What specifically what you've done? You can answer from a personal point of view or professional, or a combination of both. But 2030, Dan would like to be looking back and say, this is what I've achieved or we've achieved as a company over the last 9-10 years.
Sure. Yeah, I think, well, with Shoutout, definitely, we've got a 5-year development roadmap of how to further increase the automation. So I want to look back at that and say, like, we've achieved everything we wanted to achieve in terms of kind of completely changing the way videos are made. So, and for people to actually, for it to be a new chapter. It sounds very ambitious, but to be a new chapter in content creation, actually, and for people to really be embracing it, and for technology no longer to be a barrier for creativity.
Nice. Final question. I don't know if you have a partner, kids, animals in your house. If you do, all of them are safe, but your house is burning down and you can only save one item. What item are you saving?
Oh, good question. Probably hard drives. It's a bit of a cop-out answer, but that's the truth of it. Yeah.
Nice. Well, look, Dan, thank you very much for being my guest today. If anybody wants to learn more about Shoutout or Sprat, I'll leave the links to them below on your LinkedIn as well. But from my end, it's been a pleasure talking to you for the last 30 minutes.
And you, Ryan. Thanks so much.